Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about apps, extensions, and device features that will enhance accessibility for your learners, your students, and yourself. And I'm Carrie Lane. I am a project specialist on the educational technology team at SDCOE. My supervisor director of ed tech, Alicia Gallegos Butters, is on today. She's going to be moderating the chat and helping out with any questions. Before starting at SDCOE, I taught third grade and middle school English. And I have an assistive technology certification, and it's very interesting to me, the topic of accessibility. I've done a lot of work with it, and a lot of the tools and extensions and apps are things that I've seen in conferences and in classes that we've taken for the assistive technology certification. So excited to share those with you today. And I've put here my contact and the resource link again. So it's in the chat, and Alicia shared that out as well. But you are also welcome to contact me if you have any questions. And I always like to put up this disclaimer. Specifically today, I want to mention that we are going to be talking a lot about extensions, mainly a couple of apps and some device features. And we specifically at SDC, don't endorse any extensions or apps by themselves. So really, it's important to know that there are so many apps and extensions out there that you can use with your students. It's really important to see what your district's policy is about utilizing apps and extensions with your students. And if you are using an app or extension with specific students who have specific learning difficulties or special needs, it's important to consult with the specialists that support them, as well as the student's family, before implementing anything. So as we move through today, I've broken things up into categories. And if you search the Chrome Web Store or your app store for whatever device you're using, you'll find so many different resources, and some of those might be more or less commonly used and vetted for your district. So as I mentioned today, we're really going to focus on those extensions. We'll talk about a couple of apps that are really neat, and then we'll talk about some device-specific features for accessibility. So the first thing, many people are familiar with extensions, but extensions are programs that are created to customize browsing experiences based on users' needs and preferences. So extensions can occur in Chrome, which is what we'll talk about today, but there are also extensions for Firefox, there are extensions for Safari. So really, it's just anything that can be added to your Chrome browser that was developed to meet user needs and user wants for how things look or what they're looking to do, maybe enhance productivity. And so today we'll be looking at the Chrome Web Store. And so you can get there on most computers. It's already in your bookmarks bar. But if not, you can also go ahead and click on the link chromewebstore.google.com, and I will share that in the chat with you. And once you go here, you can search for a specific extension. So if you like any of the ones that we talk about today and you want to add them once you've checked in with your district, you can do something like that. You can also search for a theme. So if you're looking for something to enhance organization, you can type in organization and you'll see so many apps will come up. And if it's something even more specific, you can search that too. For example, we could do read aloud, and you'll find lots and lots of different things to choose from with their ratings, whether they're featured or not, things like that. So again, there are a lot of options for you that you can explore after we go over things today. Once you have found an extension that you want to add, you just hit the Add to Chrome button, and then you'll be prompted to add the extension. And the extension will show up on this little puzzle piece icon, which is to the right of your URL bar. And that's going to be where all of your extensions live, and you can access them from there. So the way I structured this today is I have different categories of tools that you might want to use with your students. And so I'll explain a little bit about the tool, and then I'll jump in and demo it. And then I'll see if anyone has any questions or anything else that they want to add, tools that they've used that are similar. So for input and output, and this, I put that as the broad category name because input could be something like speech to text, but it could also be something where you're inserting a picture and it will read it aloud. The same thing with output, it could be text to speech, but there was also picture to speech. There are some ones for specific languages or specific, for example, ASL outputs. So I wanted to be really generic with my categories. So the first extension we'll explore is going to be called Read Aloud. It's just a basic text-to-speech voice reader. It reads in 40 plus languages, and all of the extensions we talk about today are free. There are some that you'll find in the web store that are freemium, but I tried to look for ones that aren't even freemium. They're just plain free. So we'll preview that today. We'll also be previewing a speech to text, which is called Dictation Box. So that one has 100 plus languages that it will understand speech for, and then it basically just records your speech and you can copy and paste that to something else. And we'll preview something called Volume Master, which is really good for loud classrooms or for individuals who might have a hard time hearing and just need that extra amplification. So let's jump in and preview those first. And I have here just an article on productivity and AI. The reason is just so that I can show you all of the different extensions and what they do on just a general web article that I found. So the first one, Read Aloud. When you click on the little megaphone,
ZDNET independently.
What it does is it starts to read aloud. And if you want to skip to a section, you can just click into that section.
What is AI? Everything to know about artificial intelligence.
You can pause it, you can stop it altogether, and you can use the forward and backwards to go back and forth and let it read aloud. The other thing that's nice about your read aloud is it pops out in a specific box so that you can also change the readability by making the box bigger and the font bigger and smaller. So you can adjust the way that it reads and you can adjust the way that you listen to it just in terms of starting, stopping, and where you put it.
If you want to know about the fascinating.
So that's Read Aloud. It's just one of your options for a speech reader. The next one that I want to show you was Dictation Box, and this is the speech to text. So as you see, when you click on the little microphone that says Dictation Box, it pops up with an opportunity to start recording. So I allow my microphone and then I hit start. Hello, I want you to record what I'm saying. And it records what you're saying. You can start a new one. You can copy it. And if you go into options, you have the option to put it into Spanish or Italian or another language and then speak into that language and it will record you in that language. And then to show you the volume booster. And so again, this one's really useful for when you want things to be louder in your classroom or for an individual student or user. Normally, my video would sound like this.
Online has skyrocketed. Unfortunately,
if I hit Volume Master, my volume booster over here, and I hit play.
Unfortunately, this presents a problem for deaf and hard of hearing people who cannot hear your content, as well as for blind people who cannot see the content in a video. In this tutorial, you'll learn how to use.
As you can see, it got louder and it goes all the way to 600%. So normally your video would be at 100%. You can make it 6 times louder. And with the volume master, you can also adjust it so it has a boost in the bass versus a boost in just the voice, and then you can reset it. And so that's just a great option for enhancing that. Do I have any questions about any of those three? I see cannot find dictation box. Let me grab the link for you.
I was looking for it too, Carrie, and did not see it in the extension, but
I will check that in a second, but that should be the link to it. Let's see. And while Alicia is looking, I am going to switch over my screen and share just a couple of apps that are really useful too. Okay, perfect. It worked with the direct link. Great.
Yes,
Okay.
it's there. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of apps that have really unique output and input options too that I wanted to share. So one is called Seeing AI. It's really useful for individuals with visual impairments because it has multiple options to read short text, documents, product QR QR codes, currency. It can even recognize people if you have facial recognition set up on your phone, and it can tell you light frequencies and then it'll make a specific sound. So I'm going to demo that one for you, and you'll just have to bear with me as I switch between the different things that I'm recording. It may make a couple of noises, but it's a very interesting app. And it's a free one for iOS and Android. It uses AI to tell users exactly what's in front of them. And then I'll also be previewing Hand Talk, which is a free app that allows you to see sign language translations through an avatar. And so somebody can speak into it or they can type into it, and then the ASL avatar will translate for them. So I'm going to switch my share over. Okay, perfect. So the first one, Seeing AI, and like I said, it might start to talk as soon as I do this.
Oh, okay, no worries. I'm just working.
Short text, Urban Schools, a guide from America's Bez, Urban Schools, a guide for school and classroom lead, reaching practices, Mum Americal Best, Urban School.
Okay, so as you can see, I scanned a book title, and you can scan a page of a book and it will read it aloud. I'm going to do the same thing now with text that I've handwritten. So I'm going to go to handwriting.
4E no, handwriting, preview, processing. Hello, how are you?
Okay, I'm going to do the same thing now, but with currency. So it has a reader that reads currency.
$1.
It also has
$1.
labels.
Product. Product.
And it says Progresso white clam sauce with garlic and herb. I'm not sure why I didn't read that one out loud. You can also scan a room and it will tell you what it sees.
Scene, preview.
Let's do.
Processing. A dog sitting on a couch in a living room.
And it does people if you have that enabled. It also can recognize color.
Color, gray.
And it
Black.
can make color into sound.
Gray, light.
So that's Seeing AI. And then the other one is Hand Talk. And so this is my little ASL translator avatar. And so I can put in something like, hi. And I can do the same thing if I've enabled my microphone. I can do that. Hello, how are you? And they do have ASL in the other Libris version, or just so ASL or Libris version of sign language. So I'm going to switch over my share for a second. And while I do so, does anyone have any questions or any other apps that are similar that they've seen?
That I was gearing up for a vote on the impeachment of PHS. We didn't get that.
All right.
Mayorkas of failing to enforce the law and lying to Congress. While Republicans blame Mayorkas, Joe Biden is now trying to place the
Alicia, can
blame.
you check if everyone's unmuted or muted? All right, so the next extensions that we're going to be looking at are for readability and organization. And so these ones are ones that will help your students or any user to find the content they're looking for and see it in a way that makes the most sense for them. So for example, if you have a student who has a hard time focusing, you can remove ads or make it so that there aren't so many words or pictures on the page. It might be something that translates it into a language that makes it more readable, things like that. And so we'll talk about one called Print Friendly and PDF, which is a tool that basically turns it into a PDF for printing and allows you to remove excess print, excess pictures. It also allows you to adjust spacing and text size. We'll show WASP Line Reader. Some of you might be familiar with Beeline Reader, which is a paid tool that changes the color to help your students keep eye tracking when reading. This is just the free version of that uses color gradients to make reading easier. We also will look at something called Dualist, which is a dual monitor extension, so it can turn your multiple screens into dual monitor without actually having two monitors. So that's really useful for students as they're looking through things. They can split up their screen. I'm not sure how well that one's going to share when I try to do so, but we'll try it out. We also will look at Tab Translate, which allows you, once enabled, to click on any text and translate it using Google Translate. And we will jump back into the organization ones in a second, but I want to first show you all of the ones for readability. So back to our article. And if you notice, this article has a lot going on. It's got pop-ups, it's got pictures. It's really not the most user-friendly for a student who is just trying to get some content and understand it. So what we can do is we can use something called Print Friendly, and it will pop this up in a view that takes out all of that excess. So now our student doesn't have to see any of the ads. It doesn't have to see anything specific. And then what they can do is, if I don't want them to see the pictures because I don't think it's necessary, I can take away the pictures by clicking into it. I can take away things like these extra paragraphs that don't seem to be necessary. And the view on this kind of cut off, but there is an opportunity up at the top to space out the words and also to make the print size bigger. I may try to click it one more time to see if it works, but if not, just know that that's an option as well. There we go. So you see, you can adjust the spacing of your article. You can also adjust the size of the pictures if you want them to just be smaller. And then once you've set up all of the things you want to get rid of on your article, you can save it as a PDF, you can print it, or you can email it out to your students. Super useful for readability. And there are a lot of ones that do something similar where they put it into a readable form with no ads, things like that. The next one we'll look at is going to be the Tab Translate. And as I mentioned, I already have this added. So once you've added it, you can click into it and it will pull it up like Read Aloud or Print Friendly. But what's really nice about Tab Translate is you don't even need to do that. Once you have an article, you can go ahead and just highlight your text. And when you right click, you'll see Translate Selected Text. Now this allows me to just basically right click, and I can translate from the detected language, whatever that was, into whatever language I want to translate it into. Students can then listen to it.
Al escuchar el término inteligencia artificial,
And you can copy it. So if you are trying to copy something for your students into a different language, it's just a kind of quicker way of getting through Google Translate. So it does use Google Translate, which isn't always perfect, but it is a really quick way to help your students translate something. Okay, then the other, yep, I think I hear someone.
I wanted, which one was that one? Which extension?
That one was called Tab Translate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one I want to show you is called WASP Line Reader. And WASP Line Reader is the one that goes through and it will change the colors of your text to make it so that it basically allows your eyes to track better. So this one I have to go in and enable just because I don't like when it does this in the middle of my training. And then people are like, why are there 3 colors for your article? So let me now turn it on. And when I refresh, and so I've enabled it, you can set or adjust the colors that you want to have as the lines. And then when I refresh this and do it one more time, let's do this and this. Oh, there we go. And you'll notice it starts to create different colors to help me track. And so instead of having text that ends and then I have to scan back to the next row, self-driving and cars is that same color. So it helps my eye to follow. Then it gets slightly darker and darker until it turns into a black line, and then that black line connects to the next. And so it uses that basically tracking and information that it's gained from eye studies to create a system for breaking up colors to help your eyes. And then the last one, this is the one I'm not sure how it will show up for you all. I'm going to disable this app just for now so that you all don't see my multicolored screens this whole time. And just a bonus, I'm using an app called Extensity that makes it really easy to toggle on and off extensions. When you start having a lot of extensions, sometimes it gets hard to deal with them all. So I use Extensity, which I can put in the chat after. So I'm going to use this one called Dualist. And it is going to allow me to split my screen into a dual monitor without actually splitting it. And so, for example, I can split it so that one segment of my screen is 3%, the other is 7, 4 to 6, 5 to 5. And so I'm going to do this and we'll see if then I can pull over what comes out of that. So let's see if this is going to work for me. Doesn't work great, but basically on my other screen, because I do have 2 monitors, it split it up like this. And so now if I went back into it and I split it again, it basically just combines my screen back together. So that's really useful for students if they want to split up what they're doing, but they don't have a dual monitor, which most of our students don't have that, at least not at school. Okay. So I want to jump into organization extensions, but I want to make sure to allow if anyone has any questions. I didn't see any in the chat. No. All right. So for organization, and I didn't put too many in here for this session because we have another session that's coming up that's strategies to support our learners with all things accessibility, including things like organization and time management. But this one is an extension that is really useful for your students. It's also going to be really useful for you. I use it all the time. It's called Tab Cloud, and it allows you to save the windows that you're using so that you can open them on any computer that you're signed into as a Chrome user. So we'll take a look at that. And then I'll also show you this notes sidebar. So this allows you to basically just have a little type-in document that you can type on the side of any screen, and then it will read aloud what you typed, and you can copy and paste it to something else. So, for example, my notes sidebar, if I put that right here, you'll see that I copied in the chat information for today so that I could pull it up easily. But if I didn't want to do that, I could now say, I can copy it, and I can also, it's not playing for me, but it usually does play and say things out loud that you've typed. And then Tab Cloud looks at any of your open tabs. You need to be logged in, but what it does is it then creates a little browsing session of all of the tabs you have open. And so if you're doing something and you have so many tabs open and you don't want to go back and remember which tabs you wanted to keep and which tabs you wanted to close, you don't have to go through your history anymore. You can just hit this little save icon. And then, for example, if I X out this entire screen and I go back in and I pull up a browser, I can now go back into my tab cloud and hit today's training links, and it pulls open all of my different training links for today. So I don't have to worry about things accidentally closing. It's really good for students who maybe have anxiety about closing certain things or have too many things open and don't know what to do with it at the end. So this is a really good way for your class session to just kind of have your students go on a few things and then save them. So those are my 2 for organization. I'm going to pause at this category for any questions, but also, does anyone have any that they like to use for organization, readability? You can type into the chat or unmute. All right, well, if you do come up with any, feel free to share them. The next one that I want to share is for this category is focus and movement. And so a lot of times, especially when I was teaching 3rd grade, my students just really needed to have breaks, chunked learning, and then breaks to get up and move around. And so Move It was a really great tool that I used a lot in my classroom. I'm not going to preview it today because what it does is you put a certain amount of time where once that time is up, it's going to pop up on your screen with a movement prompt. So something like do 5 jumping jacks or do 3 push-ups. And my students used to always look forward to it because they knew that after a certain amount of time, they were going to be able to get up and just get some energy out. And then we would refresh and just go back to our learning. But sometimes when you're training, that's not the best thing to distract you randomly in the middle of 20 minutes. So that is a really good one if you do have younger learners or learners that just need some breaks. Also, maybe for people who are just working at computers all day, it's a pretty useful one to remind you to get up and move. And the other one, and I will preview this one, is called Mind Hero. And this is a focus extension. And what I like about this one is it uses something called the Pomodoro technique. And so how many of you, thumbs up or little Y in the chat, have heard of the Pomodoro technique? Yeah. So the Pomodoro technique was a technique created by a college student who was finding that he was having a really hard time focusing. And it was an Italian college student. And so he had a Pomodoro or tomato-shaped timer, one of those really nice looking ones that looks like a tomato. And he realized that for him, it really worked well to have a specific amount of time he was going to do work, and then he would give himself a break. Hence, this started the Pomodoro technique, where it suggests that you have periods of work that are very, very focused, and then you have periods where you take a little break. Now, this isn't perfect for everyone. For example, for me, when I start deep diving into something, I don't really like to take breaks. I like to just continue on my way and keep going. But for our students who do need those breaks and that kind of rejuvenation, this is a great tool that they can use to get them on track with the Pomodoro technique. And so let me demo that one for you. And I'm going to enable it. And you'll see Move It is disabled just because I didn't want it to come up in the middle of our session. So here's Mind Hero. And you can use it just like this, where it has a nice calming background. and you can start it. It will go to a certain amount of time, and you can have the toggle for blocked sites on. But I'm going to show you how you use it from the main page. So this is a main page, and within here, you have hero mode. Hero mode is what you set for yourself. Usually with the Pomodoro method, it is 25 minutes, but you can adjust it depending on your workflow. So this is the amount of time that you are going to be in focus mode. You're going to work really hard. You can get a reminder to start your first hero mode of the day. Then you can set up what sites are distracting for you. So if you know there are certain sites for your students that are really distracting and you don't want them to look at, you can block those during hero mode. If you categorize certain ones as neutral and productive, you can also go in and you can, and also distracting, you can go in and kind of track yourself over time. Your students can start to monitor their own learning and see what they're doing and whether they are being focused more or productive, whether they're distracted. You can set up some preferences, and then you can see all of your summaries. And so then this is the background. You can adjust the background. You can see your daily report of your work. And you can make to-do lists here too. So your students can use it as a way to track their focus modes. They can use it to make a to-do list. They can add to that to-do list. And then when they're ready, if you have the hero mode turned on, it will time you and then give you an opportunity for a breathing break. And you can set up that breathing break as either 2 or 5 minutes. Usually for 25 minutes, it's 2. And when you've done 4 sets of those, it goes to 5. But you can adjust that based on, your learner can adjust that based on what their preference is. So that one's a really good tool. And there are a lot of Pomodoro timer extensions too. That one just has a lot of things that go all together, and it was free. So let's move into some navigation. And these ones are for helping users to navigate through the browser content that they're looking at. And with this might be for a user who has limited mobility. So many of you may not have heard of carrot browsing, but if you have, could you thumbs up or yes in the chat? So carrot browsing is when you use keyboard shortcuts to control your screen and what's happening rather than using your mouse. Because for some people, if you picture someone who maybe has an injury, it might be really difficult for them to use the mouse. It might be easier to use the keyboard, students who have mobility issues. And so what you can do is you can use this extension to turn on carrot browsing. And I will demo it, even though you won't really be able to tell what I'm doing. But what it will do is it'll allow me to navigate through whole pages of content just using my keyboard rather than my mouse. So that includes clicking into links, moving up and down. The same thing with this one, click-free browsing, except that this one does use your mouse, but it doesn't require clicking. So if, for example, you've injured your wrist and it's just hard to actually make the clicking motion, but it's okay to do the scrolling, you can use these to hover over and do all of the things you might want to do, click into links, scroll up and down, just by hovering your mouse, so kind of moving it back and forth, but not actually clicking in. So let's preview those. And we'll do that on this site, just makes it a little easier on a cleaner site. And let me turn them on. Okay, so the first one, carrot browsing. On a Mac, which is what I'm using, I'm going to hit Function and then F7. On a Windows device, you just hit F7. And then it's going to ask me if I want to navigate with a text cursor. So I'm going to turn that on. And as I do that, what it's allowing me to do now is I'm basically just using my mouse, or sorry, I'm just using my keyboard to go up and down. If I hit the Enter key, it's going to open into a new page. And so you can navigate through entire URLs and websites worth of things just using keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to turn that off now. And go into click-free browsing, which is already here. So the way you can tell click-free browsing is on, there are these little arrows that have black and gray on them. And when I use my mouse, I can hover over them and it will take me, if I go to this one, it'll take me all the way to the bottom of the screen. If I go to this one, it'll take me to the top of the screen. I can go backwards using this. And I'm not actually clicking onto anything. I'm just kind of like moving my mouse. And then if you have a link, little arrows will pop up. And if you click on the arrow, it'll take you to that page. And so that's a great way to help your students who, for some reason, are unable to click into a mouse or unable to use a mouse at all. All right. Still no questions in the chat. So we'll move into multi-use. And these couple that I included here are nice because what they do is they allow you to have multiple accessibility features all at once. The first one is called Successive, and that one has 10 different accessibility features you can use in one place. And then we will preview the Immersive Reader, which is a really great learning tool for your students. And I will preview it in Microsoft because it was originally created by Microsoft for the Microsoft programs. So it's available in pretty much anything Microsoft. It's available in Flip, it's available in Canvas, and quite a few other things at this point. But then they also made an extension that does the same thing where when you right click on highlighted text, it will turn it into the Immersive Reader view. So we'll look at those two. And I'll start out with the Immersive Reader. And so you may have seen this little sample accessibility document before. I think this was the one I was using during my first training. And if I go into View, I can turn on the Immersive Reader. The Immersive Reader sets up my article, whatever it is, into a friendlier view. And you'll notice that right now I'm just going to turn off syllables. So what it does, it puts it into a more reader-friendly view, kind of eliminates any distractions on the page. You can adjust your text preferences, so you can make the text size bigger for students who need larger text. You can also make it smaller. You can increase or decrease the spacing between words. It has 3 choices for fonts. Calibri is a sans serif font. So in general, for accessibility, you want to use sans serif fonts, which are basically serifs are those decorative little edges to your letters. So if you have serifs on your fonts, that can be distracting and harder for readers to view. So Calibri is a sans serif font. It's good for accessibility. Sitka is a Microsoft created font that's good for accessibility. And Comic Sans is actually known to be a good font for dyslexia. So if you have students with dyslexia, they've done studies that show that Comic Sans supports with that. You can turn on different contrasts. So if you have a student who has a hard time with certain contrasts, you can make it like a dark theme. You can adjust the colors. And then when you go into the grammar options, if you're an English teacher and you're trying to explore syllables with your students, or you're trying to teach a student who's learning the language, you can turn on syllables to help with pronunciation. You can also mark the different parts of speech in different colors. You can show those labels to help your students understand the parts of speech. And then if you go into reading preferences, you can turn on line focus. So for example, a lot of students benefit from using a reading ruler. This will make a reading ruler for whatever your student is reading. That can be 1, 2, or 3 lines. You can also use a picture dictionary, which allows you to hover over certain words. It'll give you a picture of that word, and then it will have the word to be read aloud.
Text.
And I'll show you in a second. You can translate and it will read aloud
Text.
in a different language. And so, for example, I just used translate and I selected French. I can do it for multiple different languages. For now, let's do Greek. You can do that by word or you can do it by document. And once you've translated a whole document, you can hit this play button.
Οδηγίες προσβασιμότητας για την Google.
And it will read it in that language. If you go back to the original language, you can read it in that language.
Text you use is important.
And you can adjust the voice speed as well as whether the voice is male or female. So that is the immersive reader. And when you are in a page and you highlight something, you'll see this help me read this option, and that will also allow you to open the immersive reader for website content. And the other thing which is new to, pretty new to the immersive reader is this reading coach, which when it's enabled, it will allow you to, your students to record, and then it will help walk them through mispronounced words and things like that to support with reading. So it gives them, it uses some AI and some machine learning to give them feedback on their reading. And when you want to go back to your normal text, you just hit back and you've got your regular format for it. So that was the immersive reader. And then the other one that I want to show you is going to be, I have to turn it on, successive. And this one was the one with 10 different accessibility tools. So let me see where it is. Okay. So what you can do is you can use it to invert color, and it's inverting the color on this screen. So let me show you here. So inverts color, you can use it, to do YouTube subtitles. So if you're on YouTube, it can subtitle a YouTube video. You can use it to do redirecting through keyboards, so kind of like that caret browsing. You can toggle on if you're using a screen reader connection, you can toggle that on. Additionally, if you have pictures, you can hover over things and get the little tooltip text. It can be a screen reader, so it'll read aloud for you when you hit play. You hit OK. And it's trying to read, but all right, well, we'll come back to that. Additionally, what I like about this one, because a lot of the other tools do things like the read aloud, but this one has the ability to play and stop animations. So especially for students who are prone to seizures or inner ear issues, it might be difficult for them to see animations, flashing lights, transitions. And so if this is toggled on, students can actually use it to control the animations that they see on the screen. You can also use it to remove images from a site. So similar to that print free, you have the option to remove, and it's removing it from, for some reason it's doing it on the screen that's not showing, but it's removing all of the images from my screen, my second desktop. And you can use it to adjust font size. So lots of options. You can also use it to select a highlighter. And you can use it to change your cursor. So for example, if I want to have this nice red cursor, I can do that. Let me refresh, see why this isn't working. All right, well, for some reason, it's only showing up on one screen, but that is successive, and that is, and I'm gonna close that out since that wasn't working super well for us. You can also turn off your extensions through here, so that's another way to do it. And then I'm gonna refresh my page. And do you have any questions so far? So that ends our extensions and apps for accessibility. And I will point out and share the link to this document right here, which is just if you have any apps or extensions that you think are worthwhile for other people to know about, feel free to share them in here. It basically just allows you to put in a tool or a strategy and why it works, how it works. So if it's a Chrome extension, Microsoft Store, anything that you think might be useful, this is kind of a working document for you to add on to and to continue to look back at. Because apps and extensions are changing all the time. They're constantly different. There are more out there every day. So feel free to take a look back at that. Do you link to the training materials for the past training days? We do. So we have each training we send out a resource that has the information, but we also have on our EdTech calendar, which I can link to in just a couple of moments. We have links to previous sessions. They're in gray. And
I'll go ahead and put it in.
Oh, thank you. When you click on that link, you can see the recording, you can see any of the resources. So anything that you are looking for will be in there. And I'm going to jump into accessibility features for specific devices. And with this one, I want to point out that because lots of people are using different devices, I won't be able to preview all of the different things just because I only have certain devices that I own. But I did go in and I put a choose your own adventure. So if you are using Windows devices with your students, you can click into here, and what it has is it takes you directly to the Windows session, and then it tells you how to access the accessibility features. And then I did go in and put in screenshots of the latest version of each of these and then what the settings do, as well as some of the most new and improved features for each of these. And so that's in there for each of the devices you might be using: iPad, iPhone, Windows, Android, Mac, and Chromebook for your students. So what I thought I would do now, if there are no other questions, is just kind of point out some of the, first off, just the way that you would get to the different accessibility settings, which is pretty common across devices, and then also some of the unique things that each one has. So before I get to this, if you wouldn't mind just putting in the chat what devices you usually use with students so that I can tailor what I share to those devices. iPads, Chromebooks, iPads. Okay. Students have Chromebooks, and iPads. Excellent. So based on that, I don't have a Chromebook or an iPad to share with you. However, I will just share the screen and I will walk you through some of the interesting features. The nice thing with Mac or iOS is that a lot of it's the same. So if you did have questions, it's likely I could show you on my Mac too. But you would want to go to the iPad OS section. And when you're in iPad OS, you go to your settings and everything is going to be under accessibility. And then it breaks it up into vision sections, physical and motor sections, hearing features, and speech features, as well as general features. And so some of the new things, if you look at the general section, there's assistive touch for easy access. So what that does is it gives you options to adjust your touch accommodations for users, similar to like that those two that I was showing you with the mouse, where you can use keyboard shortcuts and things like that. Assistive touch makes it easier for you to access things using your customizable features for touching the device. You can use voice control, and one thing that's really interesting, and hopefully your iPads have it in the future, they've come out with something called personal voice. And what personal voice does is it uses AI to record your voice a number of times so that then it begins to recognize your voice and it uses your voice to speak back to you. So if you are having content read aloud to you, you can hear it in your own voice, things like that. Another one that's useful and new with iPad is sound recognition. So for users who maybe are visually impaired or have a hard time seeing, they can actually use their iPhone or their iPad to recognize sounds that are important, such as ambulances. And so you can train it. And then if it hears those sounds, it will alert you in a certain way, whether it's vibrating or making a specific sound that you recognize, so that you can help your students who are unable to necessarily get like an alert that they see. They can hear it instead. So there are options for your iPad to speak aloud to you in your voice. There's also options for your things that you see to be read aloud back to you. And this one is interesting. There's an ability, if you're working with someone with a cognitive disability, to set up assistive access so that you can have multiple users helping to control an iPad simultaneously. So those are some new iPad OS accessibility features that are kind of cool. Live captions are also interesting. You can have live captions for any of the content on your device. And then let's head down to Chromebooks. And so Chromebooks, very similar. You have settings and then you go to accessibility. And within the accessibility settings, one thing that they recommend is actually putting your accessibility settings within the quick settings for your students. So if you have students with accessibility issues, you can make it so that the accessibility menu is right there at the bottom of your screen. You also can turn on Chromevox, which is the speech reader for your Chromebook. It has a lot of options for magnifying. Magnifier has gotten really big and advanced in all of these different platforms, so the magnification can really change. You can also adjust the color. It has an on-screen keyboard you can turn on. You can also set it up to have a switch device, which allows you to basically click a button to control your computer. So instead of using keyboard shortcuts, you'd use like a giant button. And then there are options for adjusting the cursor. This one has live captions too. And so here I put some Chromebook help as well as what's new in Chrome accessibility. So there are a lot of features out there and a lot of guides to help you get started. Like I said, as I put this together, I didn't have the devices to do screenshots for everything. So I tried to give you as many things as I could. And yeah, that's about it. I don't think there was any other device that was being frequently used with students. So I will pause. We have about 6 minutes for questions or anything that anyone wants to share out. And I'm going to stop recording.